In Great Britain, more and more experts are urging Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government to step up the fight against corona. In view of the high infection rates of more than 50,000 as well as more and more admissions and deaths, Plan B urgently needs to be activated, demanded Matthew Taylor from the Hospital Association on Wednesday. The statutory COVID rules should include the obligation to provide mouth and nose protection, proof of vaccination, and return to the Home Office. The coming winter could bring a real crisis with it, warned the head of the Health Committee in the lower house, Jeremy Hunt. It is feared that the NHS health system will declare a state of emergency again in winter and cancel all preventable treatments. More than 5 million people are already waiting for cancer screening or overdue hip and knee operations. Labour leader Keir Starmer does not want stricter rules, but the government must present the situation more clearly, he demanded. The lockdown-skeptical Health Minister Sajid Javid promptly announced the first COVID press conference in months for Wednesday evening. And it was interesting. The numbers are unequivocal in the whole of Great Britain. The incidence rose steadily to 435 recently, that was the numbers on Tuesday, with an average of 130 deaths every day. On Tuesday it was 223, the highest number since March. In Scotland, mortality is currently 30% higher than the comparable death rate in the years 2015 to 2019. In English intensive care units, COVID-19 sufferers occupy 15% of the beds. According to the ONS Statistics Office, 1 million people were infected in the first week of October, which was the highest since January. In the summer, the London government under Prime Minister Boris Johnson, which is responsible for England in this case, gave up all legal corona restrictions, followed by Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. But everywhere there were certain recommendations. Continue to use masks in closed rooms as well as in buses and trains, and keep as much distance as possible from one another. But many restaurants, museums and subways seem like corona is just a fiction. No mask far and wide. In the most densely populated England, vaccination certificates are hardly required and the corresponding app is not available. In Wales, on the other hand, and since Monday also in Scotland, nightclubs, concerts and sporting events with more than 500 people inside or more than 4,000 people outside, the vaccination card or the app is a legal requirement. As I said, supported by the app of the regional NHS. Gastronomy will remain exempt from this until further notice. In secondary schools, where the mask requirement is no longer applicable, at least in some cases, entire grades are paralyzed by infection. This is also due to the fact that the Standing Vaccination Committee has long resisted the immunization of minors. England lags vastly behind other parts of the country, but also behind comparable countries on the continent. Among 12 to 15-year-olds, 14% received their first vaccination, compared to 44% in Scotland. The school year there began a good 2 weeks before the English one. The main reason, however, is likely to be that young people in England have only been vaccinated in their schools so far. That should change next week during the autumn break. Then young people can visit community vaccination centres, as has long been the case in Scotland. The English NHS boss Amanda Pritchard states that there is a lack of willingness to have third-party vaccinations among the elderly and particularly vulnerable population groups. Although the vaccination program on the island was initially far ahead of the continent, so most of the elderly over 70 years of age were double immunized early on. The third vaccination, which is actually due, is not making any progress. After all, England with 41% is almost on a par with France with 45% and well ahead of Germany with 23%, Spain and Italy with 12% each. But there are also more optimistic tones. Last week, the NHS recorded an average of 918,587 people tested daily. The positive rate was 4.9%. Professor Paul Hunter from the University of in UEA in Norwich pointed out that, especially among minors, significantly more tests are carried out than in many countries of comparable size. At least half of our cases are children or teenagers for whom the illness almost never requires hospital treatment, he says, but he shouldn't forget PIMS and stuff like that. I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.